A Year of Impulses is brought to you by me, Bea Grubenthal, and a global network of people striving for a better future by creating small positive impacts. You want to become a part of this network? You can follow me under my Facebook page under @BeAGreatImpact or my new Instagram channel under @Bea.Grubenthal. Or even simpler, subscribe to the newsletter on my website to be notified whenever new content goes live. www.beagrubenthal.com. In the last episode of A Year of Impulses, I talked to Dr. Clint Raylier, a professor for international business who made making people's lives better his objective. Now, to continue this journey, let's have a look at one great example of how one person can create positive impacts by doing what she loves. My today's guest on the show, Julia Arndt, is a world traveler too. She made it her mission to help people manage the stress in their daily lives. To me, she is a true role model when it comes to following her heart and doing what she loves and really believes in. After several attempts of starting her own business next to working for Google in the Silicon Valley, imagine that, a full-time job and projects on the side, she was diagnosed with a burnout, which forced her to take a 3-month break. And it was a break that she desperately needed, not because she did too much on the side. She says it was because she felt unhappy with what she did. But somehow she just knew that there was something more out there for her. And being curious about this mental condition led her to discover her true passion, helping other people to learn about stress management.
We are all affected by this, and it's so important that we prevent getting there. And it's not about preventing and avoiding stress, because we will always all be stressed. But it's about learning how to cope with it in a better way and learning how to take breaks mindfully to actually recharge and become stronger and more productive and more confident on the other side.
So after 7 years of being a project manager at Google, she left the corporate world to now finally do what she's really passionate about and started her journey as an entrepreneur. The most important skill that she wants to share with you today is trust in the process. Do not give up.
If you are like in a really difficult situation right now, just look at it from a different perspective and ask yourself, what do I learn from this? And be grateful for that challenge. When I was suddenly sitting at home with a diagnosed burnout, I was like, okay, great. So what now, But that was not the end of be all. It actually brought me on this more than beautiful path of creating this company that I really hope will help so many people.
This is a story about someone who was brave enough to quit a high-income job to venture out doing something new, helping other people. This is a story about someone who decided that her own experiences matter and that she can be a role model for change, for a healthier lifestyle, for a better, stress-free life. This is a story about someone who had to overcome fears, challenges, and fail several times to the eye of an observer, but she actually grew stronger out of all of these experiences.
One of the most important things that I can just really share and that I really truly believe in is that you need to trust in the process. When we have like these down days where we are like, oh my God, like, what am I doing here? Is this all going to work out? Who wants to listen to me? Who wants to read my things? What I truly believe in is consistency. And a lot of people fail. A lot of companies and entrepreneurs fail because they're not consistent. They try for 2 months, and then after 2 months, when they don't see 50,000 followers on their Instagram, they're like, oh yeah, this is not working out. But that it is a process and that it takes time. It's really important to be grateful for every single person. And that's so, so important, because every person can make it different. Every person can connect you to somebody else or can listen to your story and get something out of that and change their lives because of you. And for me, that's really what success is about.
If you are interested in starting your own project or business, something that you really believe in, then you should definitely listen to Julia's story. She talks very openly about her experiences, her fears, her challenges, leaving the corporate world and making her dream come true.
And the crazy thing for me is that in my head, I was always like, almost a little bit jealous about people taking that step. But in myself, I always thought, but I'm not an entrepreneur. I just can't pull this off, And I'm laughing about this now because I was so scared about this. And I was like, will people book me? And will people reach out to me? And will people be interested to work with me? And it's been such an amazing, beautiful experience to see that there's so much more out there than, just my corporate job. I was very proud to be a Googler, like it's a powerful company and usually people love it. And so, it was really hard for me to imagine. I recognized and realized that, I'm really very much identifying myself with this company and with this culture. And it's going to be a big change for me to say I'm an entrepreneur. But I think because I'm so connected to my mission and I really believe that people need to better work on their stress management, I think that's made it easier for me to say I'm an entrepreneur because I'm proud of what I'm doing. And I actually called myself on LinkedIn Chief Stress Management Officer because I found it kind of funny. And that's kind of how I want to define myself.
Julia lets you experience and relive her own story. Personal and spoken from a heart. She's not scared to share any detail with you, so you better listen carefully. My personal advice? Do not think she's any different just because she's worked at a big corporation for a while. We're all the same. We're all starting at some point.
People will think that when they listen, they're like, oh yeah, that sounds all really good, but what am I going to do? Like, what do I actually want to create or, improve the world or create a service or whatever it is, but yeah, we've all gone through this at some stage, I always say to people, the answer is usually much closer than you think it is. Because as you just said, you need to connect with who you are as a person and what you really enjoy doing. And that's usually what you can do best, because that's where your passion lies. So don't look too far, don't look at other people and what other people are doing. Look at what you love to do. And when do your eyes start to sparkle when you start talking about a certain topic? That's usually the topic that you love the most, and that tells us something about your personality.
Are you curious now? Perfect. Let's get started. Julia, ready?
Yes, ready.
Amazing. So here's a little more about Julia and her life story.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Bea. It's a pleasure to be here today, and it's a pleasure to talk with you. My name is Julia Arndt. I'm originally from Germany, so one more accent that you can add to your list of accents. And I live today in Lake Tahoe in California.
And the reason why she's emphasizing here where she lives today in California is because Julia really has traveled all of her life. She was born in Germany, but then most of her life she actually lived abroad. She lived in France, in Australia, at some point moved to Ireland. That's where she started working for Google more than 7 years ago. But she never really felt at home anywhere. And then when she finally moved to California to work in the headquarters of Google in the Silicon Valley, she decided that she needed a place to stay. She finally needed a place to call home.
Definitely. I've looked for this place for a really long time, for probably 12 years, and I never really looked for it, but I obviously, as we're getting older, we're like, okay, what am I going to do with my life and where do I want to be? So yeah, I bought a house here in Lake Tahoe. Yeah, it's 3 years in May. And and then I met my fiance and, obviously all of these things kind of led to the really strong motivation for me to be up here on a consistent, regular basis and call this my home. And that was 3 years ago. I guess at the same time started to think about what do I want to do next, and is my job still fulfilling me? And it has nothing to do with, the company. Like, Google's an amazing place to work. But it was more like, isn't there something more out there? I'm sure a lot of people ask themselves this question.
It was exactly that longing to do something more valuable, build something for herself that she loves, that made her curious. Until one day, a colleague at Google told her about how he started his own online retail business next to being an employee.
And I was like, okay, that's really interesting. And I was a project manager at that time in my job. And I was thinking to myself, well, if I'm managing projects for a huge company, why not manage my own projects? Because at the end of the day, it's also just a step-by-step program of like getting somewhere. So that was my first business. And I ran that for the last 3 years. I actually just decided to discontinue it. It's probably also a very common theme as an entrepreneur, that you're trying out different things. But in all of the things that I've done, I've learned so much, and I wouldn't miss it for anything. Like I know now really well of how to place products on Amazon. I know how to advertise on Amazon. I know how to speak with manufacturers. I created my own product, from measuring, from logos, from like choosing the fabrics, choosing the product lines, and choosing colors, like everything. And it was just such a rich process, but I still felt like this is not really what I'm looking for.
But she kept on looking, and she kept on trying new things, ultimately because she had the right motivation to do it.
The reason of why I've had all these ideas, and the reason of why I've been looking so almost desperately for like an idea, was because I really wanted to start moving up to Tahoe permanently, but I just didn't really know what I wanted to do. And the only way to figure it out was to just test and iterate and try and fail and just go on with it.
At this point, I really admired her for her perseverance and the strong will to move to Lake Tahoe permanently. But, not being familiar with the distances in the States, I asked why the commute from Lake Tahoe to Silicon Valley was seemingly impossible for her.
My grandma asked me that question as well. She's like, are you driving every day? And I'm like, Grandma, I can't drive 8 hours every day to go to work. So I actually always went to the Bay Area. So I would leave here Sunday night and then be at my job from Monday to Thursday, drive up Thursday night to Tahoe, work Fridays from home, and then be here Saturday, Sunday. So that was kind of my life.
I was amazed to hear how many things she did at the same time, considering the long commute, her new relationship, the new house in Lake Tahoe, the stressful job in Silicon Valley, I imagine. It just really sounded like a lot on her plate.
So lots of different things, lots of different things going on while commuting and while working full time, and obviously kind of trying to have that balance between having enough time for my family and friends and my partner. So that was all extremely challenging. Do you want me to stop or should I go on? I'm just amazed right now. Like, if you could see me, I'm sitting here staring at my screen, taking notes. I'm like, wow, how did she manage to do all of this? Because, people who know my story, I get messages, now that I've launched my new project, I get messages and they're like, it seems that your days have like 80 hours. So I know what it feels like from the outside to look at someone. But you telling me that story, I'm like, wow, how? I think because I was extremely motivated to find something that was kind of a hard project for me, and to make it like my ultimate motivation was always, I want to be in Tahoe full time and make a good living, because I think one of the biggest fears I always had was, how am I going to provide for myself, or how am I going to keep the same standard of living that I have now with an amazing tech job,
And with these thoughts in mind, she actually started making a new plan.
I can't just tell my parents I'm gonna leave and live in Tahoe. I need to have a plan.
And the new plan was to be a yoga teacher in Lake Tahoe. So Julia started teaching her first classes, she built a website, and she had everything going. But for some reason, things didn't feel right.
Again, I was listening to my inner voice and I was like, yeah, this was all really fun, but it's not really what I see myself doing full time. And I need to find something that I really, really connect with. So all of these things happened. And on top of that, I started to be really burnt out. And I started to get really a lot of signs from my body and my mind about that it's just all too much.
And at this point, where Julia started feeling that everything was too much for her, she knew that it was time to take a change. She knew that it was the time to do something else in her life, because all of these feelings of being overwhelmed actually came from being unhappy.
I actually honestly believe that it wasn't because I was doing like these different side projects. I actually believe that I was just really unhappy. And I don't know, I think I just had a lot of questions. And then, as I mentioned, I started to have a lot of signs from both my body of, feeling nausea, feeling sick, getting sick, I don't know, having trouble sleeping at night. Like there were a lot of those kind of signs. And at the same time, obviously my mind was kind of overload. Like I found myself in conversations with people all the time, telling them my story and telling them that I'm unhappy and that I want to do something different. And I don't know, it just got to a point where I was like, what am I doing? This is all really too much for me. And, there's these signs from my body kind of alarming me to stop. And so at the beginning of August last year, I decided to go to see a doctor, and they told me that I have burnout, and that I'm obviously suffering from anxiety. And I was like, oh, okay, that's really interesting. Like once they kind of put a stamp on it, sometimes it makes a little bit more sense, like all of the signals and the effects that you're experiencing. And my doctor recommended me to stay at home for 3 months. And I was basically a little bit forced to stop. And that was, now in hindsight, an amazing experience. Obviously, it was really tough at the start. I was like, oh my God, what is my team going to think of me? What is my manager going to think of me? How can I not go back to work for such a long period of time? But at the same time, I saw it as an opportunity to really figure out what I want to do next, and not just kind of tap in these different directions and areas and burning myself out.
So you did actually take that 3 months break. Wow. Again, congratulations. I think many people who are in a similar position are really struggling in taking this step of really taking yourself out of that situation that causes stress. And I think, 3 months is a lot of time.
It is a lot of time, and at the same time, I felt like it went by incredibly fast. Once I kind of, I felt like my symptoms almost got worse at the beginning and the first couple of weeks, because I was just so anxious, because I didn't know, that wasn't planned. I didn't know what I'm gonna do, So that was really difficult for me at the start. But then once I kind of eased into that and knowing, okay, I just have the time now to relax, that was really powerful for me.
So Julia was really forced to stop and think about these challenges that she was facing right now in the moment, not knowing that what she was facing right now would actually unfold as a true passion of hers and something where she felt that she can really create an impact.
And then I was always really interested in personal development. I had listened to a lot of different podcasts and read a lot of different books around personal development. But obviously now with that new experience in my life, I started to get really interested in stress and how to manage stress and how to prevent burnout, and what anxiety and depression really means and how many people actually suffer from it. I went to a yoga teacher training in October during that 3 months off. And I came back after 2 weeks and I felt like I was completely changed. I felt like I was a different person. And I talked to people, and I talked, to my friends and my family, my sisters really close to me. And they were all like, oh my God, you sound so different and you sound so wise. And it sounds like you really connected to this. And I said, yes, it was really amazing. And I've learned so much about myself, and I've learned so much about stress management.
Did you notice the slight change in her tone of voice? Can you hear the passion in her speech? Julia discovered what she's really passionate about, and even better, she experienced how stress management could enhance her own life. So she decided to share her newly gained wisdom. She decided to learn all she could learn about this topic and make her passion, something that she really believes in, her profession.
And the crazy thing for me is that up until that point 3 years ago, I always, with anyone I talked to and they told me about entrepreneurs and people creating their own business, in my head I was always like, oh my God, yet another person. I was always like, almost a little bit jealous about people taking that step. But in myself, I always thought, but I'm not an entrepreneur. I just can't pull this off, And that something shifted in me 3 years ago. That, that strong motivation to live in this place that I wanted to so badly call my home. And I was like, why can I not, Like so many people are doing it. And, I feel like obviously coming from the corporate world and coming from a very amazing search engine, I knew that everything that you're looking for and everything that you need to know, you can find online. Just have to be a self-starter, and you need to obviously be a little bit, not a little bit, maybe a lot, self-motivated to just find out things and be curious and look for information and talk to people that have maybe gone that path before and that can help you. So that was really interesting for me because I never expected to become an entrepreneur. If you would have told me 4 years ago I'm building 3 companies in a three-year timeline, I would have thought people are crazy.
And I really love you for saying that and for being honest and open about that part, because it's not easy. And I think like 50% of all entrepreneurs in the world, they never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I think there's a few people who want to be these kinds of people, but I never thought I would be either. And yet I find myself doing these. And my same reason why I started was, just as you mentioned, the motivation. You had the motivation. You knew you wanted to move to a place where the standard of living is quite high, where you need money to live there, and you really wanted to live there. You had enough reasons to try this, so you gave it a try and you found a way to succeed. And I think that's the best driver, like being motivated and really looking at, what do I want? What's my motivation? But also looking at your character, like at your personal traits. You describe yourself, and I know that also other people describe you this way, you love helping people. So I think that second really crucial part of your story was when you came back from the 3-month leave to recover from your own depression, anxiety, burnout syndrome. And then you talked to other people and you realized, wow, I can help them. I have to do something to help them. So I think that's really, really key to starting as an entrepreneur, having this motivation, having that drive, having the passion. And if you have that, you will succeed. You will find your way. It's just a matter of sticking to it.
Yeah, definitely. And, like I described of how I was looking so almost desperately for like an idea. And, obviously everything happened for a reason, the way it happened, because I learned so much in the other 2 businesses as well that I created. I always say to people, the answer is usually much closer than you think it is, because as you just said, you need to connect with who you are as a person and what you really enjoy doing. And that's usually what you can do best, because that's where your passion lies. So don't look too far, don't look at other people and what other people are doing. Look at what you love to do. And when do your eyes start to sparkle? When you start talking about a certain topic, that's usually the topic that that you love the most, and that tells us something about your personality.
I will now hire you as a salesperson for my project. Just so you know. But that's exactly what I'm preaching. That's exactly what I'm preaching to people too. And it's so simple, and it sounds unreal when I say, do what you love and create an impact. All I'm saying is, find out what that one thing is that you really like, and it can be super simple, and it can be something you've always done, you just didn't appreciate it that way. And then become really good at that one thing that you love, and then you'll see that all of your actions will be followed by a positive reaction. The outcome cannot be negative. I mean, okay, I don't even want to go in the negative extreme. I think you know what I'm trying to say, right?
What I'm thinking here as well is that, it sounds like people that listen now, they probably think, oh my God, like that sounds so easy. And that everything was like, it was so straightforward. And it wasn't, like for 3 years, I was testing these different things out, and then obviously felt that fear for so long of like, can I really make it work on my own? Like, how am I gonna, be financially stable without Google? I've had like all of these fears, and on top of that, and maybe that's also important to mention, I didn't really have a lot of people that supported me in that decision. My family was not happy about me leaving my big corporate important job. My partner was not happy me leaving my corporate job, because he's an entrepreneur himself. And for him, it was obviously a really great security to have one of us be in a safe position and in a safe place where his job is very seasonal, and can be really good one year and can be not so good the next year. So, like I had to work through all of that to get to this point where I was like, okay, I hear all these other opinions, but I need to take care of myself and I need to decide what's really good for me. And that is so, so important. And, you need to surround yourself with the right kind of people. And I still try to do that. I obviously had these voices a little bit nagging on me of what am I doing, but I also had like really amazing people that believed in my vision. I had my sister, who's also a personal development coach for moms, and I had a few other people. And it doesn't, I always say it doesn't have to be a physical person. It can even be listening to podcasts or following inspiring people that are living the life that you want to live in order to be inspired and to, move forward with what you're planning to do.
Yeah, I couldn't relate more with what you just said. I think people, if they hear to you speak now, and if they're listening to me speak in my interview, maybe they get the impression that it's easy, because the way, when you're already there, when you're already in the movement and in the mindset, maybe it is a little easier because you've already been doing this for a while. But I agree, getting to this point, it is hard work. It's not impossible. It is fun at times, but you really, every day, over and over again, you have to convince yourself to do it, to take the right decisions, to set your mind to it, to do more research, to talk to more people, really be proactive in every single one of your steps. You mentioned that you had a lot of fears when you were just starting out. Obviously, everybody has fears, but especially looking at a big career decision that might potentially change your life, your lifestyle, your relationship. How did you handle these fears?
Great question. I actually just thought about that as well, that I would love to share this. So one of my biggest fears, and I think it's already coming out a little bit in what I've been talking to you about over the last 30 minutes, but one of my biggest fears was really this financial security, because I have created a life for myself over the last couple of years that is a beautiful life. And, obviously kind of going back, like for me in my head, I was always like, do I need to take a step back, and do I need to accept that I might not make as much money as I'm doing right now? And that was a huge block for me. And so I've been listening to all these podcasts, actually to a lot of German podcasts. And one of them was talking about, kind of the energy of, and like the energy of abundance, and just that belief system of like, I believe I can't make enough money. Well, I probably won't, but if I do believe that I can make enough money, then I will. And I realized that a lot of these kind of blocks and these limiting beliefs came from, from my family and from my partner, and that they were like, well, if you go and you want to live full time in Tahoe, then you need to, expect that you don't make as much money anymore, and you need to adjust your lifestyle. And I didn't really agree with that. And so I was listening to that podcast on one of my drives down back to Silicon Valley. It dawned on me that why am I afraid of that? Like, if I think I can make more money or enough money for myself, I will be able to, because I know I'm a business person. Like, I can set my own goals, and obviously there's a huge power behind manifesting and believing in something. Just maybe to quote one book here that I'm really, really enjoying reading at the moment. It's from Joe Dispenza, and it's called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And it's about how you can actually manifest and change things in your life that you really believe in, and how we, with our limiting beliefs, kind of almost hinder ourselves from getting to certain places. So that was like the biggest fear. And then obviously the other fear was for me to have like my support. I didn't want to disappoint my parents, or I didn't want to disappoint my partner. I'm a very harmonious person. And so, it was tough. Like, it took many, many conversations over many, many months to get, especially my partner, because he lives with me, my family is in Germany. So that, doesn't affect me as badly when they maybe not 100% agree with me. But for my partner and me, it was obviously really important that we are looking eye to eye with like in this direction. And I think him seeing how much I blossomed, like it took a while, that was not like a one kind of thing conversation where he was like, yeah, okay, you just do your thing. It was really like I had to convince him pretty hard over many weeks that this is what I want to do, but that I'm also able to do it, and then I think that was my two biggest fears. And then I guess the third fear before all of that was, what am I going to do? But that obviously kind of dissolved itself automatically. And I think we are always so afraid because we are looking with a very narrow mindset. And when we are in a position, and we are like, oh, this is the life that I know, we're always talking about getting out of your comfort zone and doing something that is not something that you're used to. And one of the beautiful things that people always told me was that if one door closes, another door will open. And like, I'm laughing about this now because I was so scared about this. And I was like, will people book me? And will people reach out to me? And will people be interested to work with me? And already when I kind of made that step and I announced like on social media and on my LinkedIn profile that I'm leaving Google, I've had all of a sudden so many people interested and so many new people reaching out to me like you, that were like, hey, let's have a chat and let's see how we can connect. And this has happened so many times over the last couple of weeks. And it's been such an amazing, beautiful experience to see that there's so much more out there than, just my corporate job and a little bit the misery of that I went through over the last 3 years of commuting and not feeling really happy in my job. And it's all meant to be. So that's kind of my story.
Thank you very much for sharing the story of your fears and also telling us about these belief systems and worries that you had. It really just makes you and your story so much more human. And I think it's easier for people to connect if they just see we're all human. You might be someone who lives in the States and works for Google or worked for Google. I might be someone who lives in Mexico now and worked for Red Bull for a long time. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. We're all humans. We all have our families. We're all scared sometimes.
For sure. Absolutely.
And I can assure you, I went through exactly the same fears.
And I'm sure a lot of people will think that when they listen, they're like, oh yeah, that sounds all really good, but what am I going to do? Like, what do I actually want to create or, improve the world or create a service or whatever it is, but yeah, we've all gone through this at some stage.
Exactly. And I think it's very normal to go through these stages. And we had this little conversation before we actually started the interview. Even if you've launched, even if you're already live, even if people already know there's something new, you don't have to have the answer yet. It's okay to be imperfect. It's okay to be at 80%. If you get the right energy across, if people understand the bigger picture, they will stay with you because they will be interested to know more. So they will stick around. And everybody else who's not sticking around, they wouldn't have been the ones to buy your product or your service anyhow. That's what I believe. And that's actually a super nice bridge to something that I've wanted to say from the very beginning on this interview and on your story. One thing that really inspired me about you and your personal story of how you switched from going a big corporate world to doing something that you really, really believe in is how you announced it. Because you mentioned this just now telling the story. You posted something on LinkedIn. You were not even in my network, so I wasn't even supposed to see this. But even before you left your big corporate position that you've been with for 7 years, which is a hell long time, you already posted on LinkedIn, and it kind of sounded as if you already knew exactly what you were doing. And I was amazed by how can she already know what her new company is going to be and what she's going to offer in that kind of really self-secure way that you communicated it before you even left your old job. And then I looked at the website because I was so curious for the way you phrased it, like going from your management position to our project management position to stress management and working with corporations. And then I clicked and I found, hey, the website is not ready yet. And I loved it. I loved it even more because I loved the pure spirit of saying, I really want to do this. I believe it and I'm going to feed it to you. And I think that's what's necessary.
Yeah, I mean, like I have a very strong network, powerful network over the last 7 years, and and I was like, okay, I need to put together a website, and obviously I knew how because I had this experience which really served me during that time, from my other businesses. And I was like, okay, I don't have a lot of information yet, but I'm just gonna throw something on here. And I obviously had the podcast, and I could talk about myself and about the services that I'm planning to offer, and that has already shifted so much as well since that initial thought and idea came up. And it's a process. I will still test and iterate, I'm sure. Like I will still go to companies and test certain programs out, and they will probably not work, and then I will change that, and that's totally fine. And thank you for saying that, by the way. And then the LinkedIn post was such a blast. That was also actually a totally honest mistake, because I had never posted on LinkedIn before, but I did want to let my network know that I'm leaving. But I didn't know that there's like these different settings. So I basically blasted this post to everyone on the planet, I feel like. But I had I have like maybe 700, 800 contacts on LinkedIn, and I had 150,000 people that apparently saw that post, and like 900 people that liked it, and 50 people that commented on it. And I was like, oh my God, like what did I do wrong? And it was great because we got to connect, and there's some other people that connected with me as well. And it's just so beautiful how sometimes these mistakes just bring something so profound and powerful into our lives.
Absolutely. And I just love that feeling of knowing that imperfection sometimes is just the best thing that can happen to us, right? Things that go a little wrong.
Yeah, totally.
So something else I'm really curious about is, when did you go, like in defining your job title, when did you change this? When did you start defining yourself through being a stress management pro and not through project manager anymore?
I love this question. I definitely, that was, I guess, actually also a fear or like a limiting belief or like a block of mine going through this whole process, because I was very proud to be a Googler, like it's a powerful company and usually people love it. And so, it was really hard for me to imagine. And, obviously, especially in those last weeks kind of leading up to leaving Google, I was really aware when I introduced myself and people would ask me what I do for work. And I would be like, oh yeah, I'm working for Google. And it would always feel good, of course, like it's a powerful thing to say. And I recognized and realized that, I'm really very much identifying myself with this company and with this culture. And it's going to be a big change for me to say I'm an entrepreneur. But I think because I'm so connected to my mission, and I really believe that people need to better work on their stress management, I think that's made it easier for me to say I'm an entrepreneur, because I'm proud of what I'm doing. And I actually called myself on LinkedIn Chief Stress Management Officer because I found it kind of funny. And that's kind of how that's really how I want to define myself in the future. And that was definitely an interesting kind of change for me.
It's these little things that we do in our everyday life that really define or say a lot about our personality. And I still find myself, when people ask me, so what do you do? I find myself stumbling and I'm like, well, I run 2 companies and I do 2 different projects and I have 3 websites. And I'm like, wow, what are you doing? Can't you just say? And that's where I think it's hard. And that's why I really respected you for putting it out there. I'm building a stress management company. And yeah, I love this. I love the spirit. This leads me to another question that I prepared for you, preparing for the interview, because I hear it a lot, and I bet you do too. You might be aware that you're not the only stress management coach out there. Because sometimes people might be scared to start something new that they're passionate about, because somebody else is already out there doing what you do. And the internet makes it seem like there's millions, which maybe in fact is not even true, but it's just like these, targeting algorithms, and Google and Facebook just show you what you're actually Googling for. We know all of these principles. I think you know it more than I do. What do you think? What makes you successful? What makes you believe that you will be the one stress prevention mindfulness coach that will be successful?
Also, great question. I love the question because I have, of course, heard that before. People are like, oh, you're a coach? Oh, that's really cool. I actually thought about this too, but there's already so many coaches out there. Like, why should I become a coach? And it makes me smile, this question, because I definitely was in that spirit and in that mindset for a while with my sister, because we kind of started on that personal development journey together. We were like, oh, this is so cool what they're doing, but like, but who are we? Like starting a coaching business or a podcast, who is going to listen to us? But that mindset for both of us totally shifted. And I have a lot of people here in my, like a lot of friends around in my close circle that also want to become coaches, and they are more focused maybe on spirituality or on authenticity. But every person is a little bit different, and every person has their own network. And I always say, like we obviously see like the really big ones, right? We're looking up to these people. They have like 1 million followers on Instagram, or they have like 500,000 subscribers on YouTube, and that really intimidates us. And it's still I wouldn't say it intimidates me still, but I still obviously look up to that. And it would be great if at some point over the years I would get there, but that's not my goal anymore, because I believe that even if I just influence, and I made these calculations as a business woman, and as an entrepreneur, I made these calculations, and I'm like, even if I just influence 30 people per year one-to-one in coaching, and maybe I have 10 deals with corporations on stress management trainings, I will still make a great living, and I will still be able to influence people in a positive way. We don't need 50,000 people that follow us in order to be successful, and that's for me a really important step, obviously, at the moment, building my business. And it's my 3rd week as an entrepreneur, being at home and building all these different things. And I'm really, obviously I'm checking like my stats, and I'm looking at how many people have listened to my podcast, how many people are liking my Instagram post, how many people watching my YouTube videos. And it's really important to be grateful for every single person. And that's so, so important, because every person can make it different. Every person can connect you to somebody else, or can listen to your story and get something out of that and change their lives because of you. And for me, that's really what success is about.
I would love to end the interview right now because it's a nice ending, but I can't. Sorry, there's too many questions left. I see it exactly the same way. And usually the way I tackle these questions when they come up and you're like, what are you doing? Are you like a new online coach for life happiness? What is this about? In the beginning, these questions kind of did a lot to my head, and they made me worry.
Of course.
And I started thinking, oh my God, did I just fool the whole world and myself and believe that I could do this? And then I realized, no, I truly believe in it. And as you said, you've already had this experience when you were still at your company talking to this company internal chat, and then these amounts of people replied and they wanted your advice, even though you were not even a registered company yet or anything like that. I think sharing your personal experience, sharing your story, sharing your advice, if of course you put a little research and time behind it and enough passionate knowledge, if you do that and you do it with a really authentic motive and with the aim to help people, the outcome will be great, and you will start helping people along their way. You will start becoming a role model. And since I truly believe that, and I've experienced it, I've experienced people coming up to me after talking at universities or giving guest lectures, and they said, wow, you've really changed my life. And I don't have to be a professor for that. I don't have to have a certificate for that. If it helps them, amazing. That's all I want to do.
And every single person that walks up to you is such a huge gratification for your work, and I've had this experience as well with my trainings at Google. And I think one of the most important things that I can just really share and that I really truly believe in is that you need to trust in the process. It's like people always say, oh, the journey is nicer than the destination and all these things, and it's true. But what is so important, and what my sister and I, we like coach each other and we like push each other when we have like these down days where we are like, oh my God, like, what am I doing here? Like, is this all going to work out? Who wants to listen to me? Who wants to read my things? And what I truly believe in is consistency. And a lot of people fail. A lot of companies and entrepreneurs fail because they're not consistent. They try for 2 months, and then after 2 months, when they don't see 50,000 followers on their Instagram, they're like, oh yeah, this is not working out. But that it is a process and that it takes time. Like, and this is like, for me, this year really stands in building my business. Like, I'm not expecting anything crazy. If it would happen this year, I mean, even better. But this is not my expectation. I'm really trying to keep my expectations super low and tell myself, I need to put myself out there, and I need to show people that I'm a credible person, and I'm not talking just about this for a month or two, but I'm really an expert. And I think even through that process, you're becoming even, you learn more and more, and you become more and more an expert. And then people will pick up on that. And that's so important to build a business.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. People need to hear that. I think it's super important for people to hear that everybody's struggling at some point.
I think now you heard my story, it makes maybe more sense.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why these stories are so super interesting, because you just get a little feeling, okay, this is the job title and this is maybe what I expected, but this is the story behind it, and this is why the person thinks and acts that way. And ultimately, what I'm trying to achieve is give people a little bit of insights maybe about other people's thinking, but also some fresh ideas and some hints and life hacks and life advice on how they can maybe improve their decision making and how they can reach the goals that they set out for themselves. So that always leads me to my next question, and kind of to the wrap up of the whole interview. What do you think people can learn from you, from your personal story?
Oh, wow. Okay. Also really good question. You should have sent me these questions before.
I like the authentic answers.
Great. Okay, what can I learn from me? I think that it's okay to go through difficult times, and that it's okay to be afraid sometimes, and that you, like, through accepting that and still moving forward and believing in your dream, you can still make it happen. I think that was a really important learning for me. Another thing for me is really that all of the information through the internet today is out there. You can do anything. Like, for me, that's always so amazing, like, I'm sure that it goes for you as well. We start a podcast, and then you're like, okay, I've never known how to create a podcast or anything. And then you search for podcasts or how to create a podcast, and there's like a million pages out there, from like, what kind of equipment do you need, what software do you use, how to create a podcast, what to talk about, everything is always out there. And for me, that's so amazing. And for me, it makes being an entrepreneur so easy in that sense. So what I want to give out to people, and what I want people to learn from that is no matter what you want to do, there's always people out there that have done it before you, or in a similar way, or that have talked about this, and you will find information. You are able to connect with people on this, and just enjoy the process. It's so much fun.
It's a lot of fun, but it's hard too.
And it's also, and I think that leads me maybe to my third learning, or what people can learn from me is to not give up. Like, when I was suddenly sitting at home with a diagnosed burnout, I was like, okay, great. So what now, but that was not the end of be all. It actually brought me on this more than beautiful path of creating this company that I really hope will help so many people. If you are like in a really difficult situation right now, just look at it from a different perspective and ask yourself, what do I learn from this? And be grateful for that challenge.
Absolutely. I think that's very valuable, and that's a great insight and a great thing to make a note about. So, yeah, this is pretty much all the official part of me asking asking you about your story and what people can learn from you. Is there anything else that you would like to add for people to know?
No, I think I've pretty much said everything. Thanks so much for giving me the opportunity to share my story. It's really been a pleasure. And yeah, I think if people obviously are curious to connect with me or to find me, I'm sure you will add all of the information in the show notes. But yeah, stress management is really a skill that everyone can learn, and entrepreneurial being is also a skill that everyone can learn. So never give up.
Exactly. If you want to listen to another podcast where Julia's talking about stress management and stress resilience, her podcast is called Stressed Deliver Your Stress Resilience, and it'll be great. Yeah. With that shared information of how to start out with your new project and how to not be stressed about it, you have already 50% of your way covered.
Yeah, that's the point. Yeah.
Okay, that's the end. Bye-bye. It's not the real end, but I'll stop the recording.
I know.
My dear listeners, I'm really sorry for that. I bet you would have loved to hear the whole conversation that we had after the interview. And believe me, there's so many more stories to tell and share. But hey, you got quite some insights and inspiration from Julia, right? How did you like this episode? Do you have any questions, ideas, or feedback that you'd like to share? Please, please, please email me under podcast@beagrubenthal.com. That is podcast@myfullname.com. Let me say one thing. I cannot thank you enough for all of your messages and feedback. I really appreciate it. Messages keep coming in through all channels, through social media, email, and I'm really grateful for your support. Like Toby from Germany, who shared his recent life story with me and let me know he's venturing out to start something new as well. And he let me know hearing of my story was really inspirational and motivating for him. So thank you, Toby. I really appreciate that. And I hope Julia's story will help you too. This episode was produced by me, Bea Grubenthal, with great support of Julia Arndt. A big thank you goes out to Lake Tahoe, California. For more information about her and her new project, check out the podcast information. There will also be a lifehack post featuring Julia that you can find on my website, www.beagrubenthal.com. The next episode of A Year of Impulses will go live soon. The easiest way to get notified is subscribing to the newsletter. Thank you for listening. Keep up the good vibes.